You started with a dream, now you leading a team, working it closing them deals, working with purpose. You don't walk around with a purse, but you working it, walking in heels. Beauty and brains, speaking and fighting for change, intellectual and clever. You show the ladies everything a man can do, you can do better.
All right, guys. Hey, welcome back to another session of the Wealthy Kings Men's Virtual Summit, our first ever Flippin' Hills Virtual Summit. And I am so excited to bring to you guys here today my family, this young man. I can't even call him a young man. He done grown into this grown man who's out here killing it. But when I met him, I definitely was like, this young man who is, serious about what he wants, knows exactly what he wants. He started off, my first introduction to him was through being a client. And I remember working with him and just being so grateful, like, hey, this is my ideal client, right? Somebody who knows what they want, somebody who runs their numbers, knows exactly what they're looking for, not looking to waste my time or theirs. And for my realtors who are out there, you guys know exactly what I am talking about. But since then, he has transitioned into doing so much more real estate investing and so much more just investing in general, growing the brand, creating this social media presence, and really putting on for the culture. So it is my pleasure to bring to you guys Mr. Brian Robinson. Hey.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I'm super excited to have this conversation.
I know, it's long overdue.
Let's do it. Yeah, that's a fact.
Overdue.
That's a fact.
It is long overdue. So for those of you, for those folks who may not know who you are, please just give us a brief introduction about yourself, your background, where you're from, and how you got started.
Okay, sounds good. So for those who don't know me, my name is Brian Robinson. I am a certified public accountant. I actually got my, taking a step back, I'm from Harvey, Illinois, grew up, and, one thing I had to overcome was a lot of self-doubt, a lot of, lack of self-confidence. So that's something I've been building upon, man, for as long as I can remember at this point. But in terms of, my career, graduated from Northern Illinois University, studied accounting. Then I transitioned into a 9-to-5 role with one of the top public accounting firms, PwC. And I was there for a couple of years, but while I was there, I was building these side businesses, right? So first and foremost, I wanted to do real estate, didn't have the capital. So I literally stopped looking for real estate for a couple of months, started this car rental business, which I came across, and that grew like crazy, doubled back, bought some real estate with the help of Rashana. She helped me make 6 figures. So shout out to her. And then from there, I'm really big in the digital space in terms of courses, teaching people, how to invest in real estate via house hacking, as well as how to build a car rental portfolio. And now transitioning, trying to get into development. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. And now I'm a full-time entrepreneur, actually. So I actually got laid off in the spring of 2020 and made the decision that I wasn't going back to corporate, and it's been fruitful ever since. So that's a blessing. But yeah, that's a brief intro into who I am and what I do.
AKA the man. Okay. Like, I think it's just a beautiful thing to see, right? And it's such a blessing in regards to, you're like, hey, this is where I started and this is, just where I transitioned. And so I want to ask, so you mentioned, like while you were in college, like initially trying to figure out real estate, but couldn't figure it out. What was, kind of those initial things that you were like, okay, I'm going to go, because you got accounting and real estate, which are like in the same field, but not really, right? So, explain to me like the thought process around that. Like even going after accounting, was that more so like, was that even a passion, or that was just like, look, I know I'm gonna, be able to make some good money from this, or, and then even real estate, was that like, I know for a fact I want to build this massive portfolio? Like where did, all of that come from, the initial desires?
Yeah, honestly, everything was strategic. And even when I wasn't moving strategically, I was kind of like unconsciously moving strategically. So first and foremost, when it comes to accounting, I knew that, well, I was always good at math. Let's just throw that out there. But when it comes to accounting, I always knew it was something where I would have a job forever, right? This is before I really kind of got into entrepreneurship. And on the back end, I knew that my family was really financially illiterate. So I figured what way, this is the perfect way to kill, two birds with one stone, where, I can have a job forever, have a great income, but also I'll be able to understand and digest these financial concepts that really no one in my family understood, because I didn't learn anything about money until I really took it upon myself to do that, self-education by reading different books, listening to podcasts, and so on and so forth. So then when it came to real estate, it really was a no-brainer, because I had a fraternity brother who was flipping houses while he was at his 9 to 5. And then as I read more and learned more about real estate, it just became more and more of a no-brainer, because literally everybody invests in real estate. Everybody just isn't on the right side of that transaction. And that's really what I came to understand. So once I understood that, I figured that I had to figure out a way to get my hands on some real estate. And so once I did it, I kind of got hooked, bought a couple more properties. Then I sold everything, and now I'm trying to build everything back up.
Okay, good stuff. So, I want you to elaborate on that. You said everybody invests in real estate, but not everybody's on the right side of this transaction. So, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's just like, everyone has to live somewhere. Or, conversely, whenever you go to work, you're going into a property that someone is making money from some way, somehow, right? But most people are just on the side of the transaction where they're either paying rent, or they're paying for an event space, or they're paying for Airbnb, or they're paying for a hotel. All of that is real estate, but people don't look at it that way. So then when everybody is pushing this, buy a house movement, house hack, et cetera, they push this ideology on people that, everybody doesn't have to own a house, when in reality, you should own something, right? It doesn't even necessarily have to be a house, but I say real estate because, one, they're not making any more land. And then we've seen this trend more recently where BlackRock and all of these big corporate investors are buying up the bulk of the real estate available in America. And now rental prices are increasing like crazy. So you have to think about, like, okay, what's going to happen when all the corporate entities own real estate, and now you're stuck being a renter forever? It's like you miss out on a huge opportunity to put your family in a really good position financially, just because you didn't want to take it upon yourself to own something. So that's what I mean by that.
Gotcha. Okay. So I want to talk about, while you were at corporate, you started your first, entrepreneurial journey and into the car industry. And so tell us what that was like, even finding that and then navigating that and even maintaining that through,
Mhm.
having a 9 to 5 and balancing that.
Yeah. So originally, like I said, the plan was to buy real estate. So I was looking for houses with you for a couple of months, and I realized that what I wanted really wasn't possible, because originally I wanted a house that was completely finished. I was completely scared to do any type of renovation, but the numbers just really didn't make sense to buy something super new, because at the time we thought that was the top of the market when two flats was selling for 280. And I wish hindsight is always 2020, right? Because those same ones I was selling for like 400 now, just what, 3 years later. But essentially I didn't have the down payment money. So I created this whole elaborate, 1 year plan to save up 10,000 that I was going to use for a down payment. But I ended up switching to taking a break from looking for houses. And that's when I ran into one of my friends who was investing in the car rental business. They had maybe 5 cars at the time. They told me about it. And I had this 2016 Ford Fusion that was taking $500 out of my pocket every single month. And at the time, working in public accounting, I was doing 70-hour weeks. So literally I only had one day out the week, because I was working Monday through Saturday to drive that vehicle. So the car was super underutilized. So when I heard about the car rental business, it was kind of like a no-brainer. I knew it was going to be risky, because I've never done it before, but at the same time, I had, someone who was kind of like a brother to me, helping me navigate that. So I put that car on a platform. Literally over the next 36 days, it was rented out, and I made a little under $1,100 and basically cash flow $600-700. And from there I was kind of hooked. So then I just began to, buy more and more vehicles. But in terms of just balancing entrepreneurship and a 9 to 5, it wasn't as tough as I thought, mainly because, I picked the industry where it was mostly passive. I only had to spend, 3 to 5 hours a month working on this car rental business. So it didn't really hurt that much until I got back in that busy season where, I'm working those 70-hour weeks again. That's when it became a little bit more difficult. But all in all, I think the biggest thing that helped me was having a schedule and also just choosing to be happy. And what I mean by that, every time I got off work, I would I would basically treat it like, I was going to work with an investor, using the funds that I got from my first investor, which was, my 9 to 5. So I just had that mindset, and I had this tenacity about maintaining my schedule, not really going out, and just really dialing in, because I knew that, if I put this work in for a year, 2 years, I would be in a much better position a couple years later. So I was just determined to get there, and I didn't let anything stop me.
And how old were you at this time?
2019, I was, how old was I? Maybe, what is that? 25? Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. So I think I closed on my first property at 25. Yep.
Yeah. And I just look up to you because I admire that about you so much. I mean, obviously, black men, we have, or you guys have, this position, right, or this stigma in society of being this or that or whatever, right? But obviously, black men are so much more than just the negative, that the media can portray. And I definitely commend you for, starting out. Which is it's still, your mid 20s, which is still, early on making decisions and saying like, hey, this is exactly, what I'm gonna do to get myself set up, for my future. Did that drive come from, was it your parents? Was it just peers where you were like, look, I'm not gonna, just be average in my life, basically, and I think that's the real thing. Somebody actually asked me that the other day, and they were like, oh, where does your hustle and your entrepreneurship come from? Like, is it anybody in your family? And I was like, no, not necessarily. I was like, but to be honest, I think it's the fear of being average for me. Because I believe, being average, like, gets you average results, and that's okay, but that's just not, what I want for my life, right? Like, we stay up, late, and we wake up early, right, to get things done. We don't just sit back and take whatever is given to us. We go after exactly what it is that we want. So where would you say that, that drive came from at such an early
Yes.
age?
So it probably came from my mom, because she's like a hustler, but at the same
Shout out
time,
to
I did,
moms
yeah, but I
who
did
I got a
see,
chance to meet during our showing process, our home
yep,
search.
for sure. But I think it came from her. But at the same time, I think what I took from her was that, although you can be a hustler, although you can have this, great mindset, you really got to continue to push what you think is your, I guess, potential, push those boundaries. Because ultimately, I think I do have a fear of being average. Like, that's always been something that really stuck with me. I always been like super, super competitive. And I think the fact that, growing up, I really struggled with self-confidence and things of that nature. I think that made me, want to continue to grow every single day as well. So ultimately, I think that, man, you have so much opportunity every single day just to grow, to compete, to just figure out what your potential is. So at the end of the day, you really don't know what your potential is. It's like you try something new, you see if you can do it. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but you just have opportunity to learn every single day, and that's something that always really stuck with me. And then from a family standpoint, always felt like a lot of people in my family were super talented, super intelligent, but they let, their environment kind of dictate what they could do, and they never really pushed those boundaries, like I said earlier. So I knew that I wanted to do something different. I know that I wanted to be an example for my family that, we can really do whatever we put our mind to. We just have to believe it first and foremost for ourselves.
Absolutely. Cool. So, like you mentioned, you purchased your first property at the tender age of 25. And I know, from working with you, how analytical you were during that process. So, explain to us, exactly what it is you were looking at, looking for, looking to accomplish. What were some things that was important to you, when you were looking for that first property? Because again, I admire that so much, how diligent you were with sticking to your numbers, to ultimately find and negotiate, the right deal, which ended up turning out to be, you know, exactly what you wanted it to be, or maybe more than what you wanted it to be.
For sure. So first thing I was looking for was, man, just a nice property. Wasn't really too worried about the cash flow until I started running the numbers. And I'm a numbers guy, like I'm an accountant, CPA, right? So the biggest things were equity as well as cash flow. Once I really dialed in on those numbers, and that's when I really kind of figured out that I couldn't just buy something that was already freshly rehabbed. I had to buy something that needed a bit of work, because that would give me the opportunity to, get some equity as well as get a way better deal as far as cash flow goes. And I was looking for a 3-unit building, because while a lot of people house hack with duplexes, they typically still are going to be paying something every single month. So I got savvy and I'm like, okay, well, I know I can't afford a 3-unit. That's off the table. So let me find a 2-unit with a garden, and I'll just live in that garden unit and rent out the top 2 units. That way, not only will I be living for free, I'm going to cash flow a couple $100s a month. And that combined with, not having to pay $1,200 to rent with anybody else, I'm going to be able to save an additional, $1,500 a month. And my plan was really to decrease my living expenses to the point where I can invest, 70, 80, 90% of my income every single month. And that's exactly what I was, able to do. And then just in terms of the rehab, I knew I didn't want to do a full gut. Like that was out of the question. So I wanted something, very cosmetic, where I can do paint, maybe change out the baseboards, probably gut the kitchens and the bathrooms, flooring here and there. Nothing too crazy for my first one, because I knew I was going to make a ton of mistakes. I knew it was going to be a whole entire learning experience, but I was okay with that. I was okay with making mistakes. I feel like that's all just a part of the process. So yeah, that was in a nutshell, everything I was kind of looking for.
Tell us about the numbers.
Yeah, so purchase price was 140. I put 52 grand into the renovation, so I was all in about 192. Originally, I think it appraised for around 240. So I wanted to do a cash out refinance originally, but the numbers, it was too small of a margin. So we waited. Luckily, the market shifted,
And really,
and
sorry, really quickly, why was it too small of a margin? What was the lender telling you at the time? Was it like a 75 or 80%?
yeah,
Let's
so
talk about that.
they will only give me 75% of, the appraised value. So I think at the
Mhm.
time, if it was 240, they was only gonna give me 180. So it didn't make sense. I thought it was gonna be worth 250, but it didn't appraise for that. But luckily the market shifted. Then it became worth 300. So originally then I was gonna cash out, because at 300, 75% of that is 225. So I would have been able to pull out, what is that, like 33 grand or something like that. But then I got laid off. So I couldn't get financing no longer. And it was crazy. I was literally in the middle of the cash out refi process when I got laid off. And they was literally verifying my income. And I had to tell them I got laid off and couldn't do this anymore. So that's when I just, decided to sell, and we ended up selling for 300. So all in all, with the cash flow, the additional savings from not having to pay rent, and then selling the building, I was able to basically come up on 100 grand. So that really helped, because that was my first time having that much money at one time. And then I just continued to roll that into other deals.
Yeah, good stuff. And I like that, you shared that and how you broke it down. And yes, folks, for those who are listening, you do have to be able to financially qualify to get the money out of your own house. Yes.
Yeah.
So, that for whatever reason, that is sometimes a common misconception. People are like, well, I got equity in my house, I got money, I can't just get it out. No, the bank wants to make sure that it's basically like you're going through the loan process all over again,
Mhm.
really,
Yep.
essentially, right? It not be as much of a headache or as much paperwork, but yeah, that, like Brian said, you definitely still have to go through that process. But cool. Okay, so you got out of that project, like you said, you made a good profit and then you moved on to do some other stuff. So tell us what was next for you in that journey, because now, like you say, you sold the property and now you laid off, right? You were so
Mhm.
used to, having a 9 to 5 and navigating that, while you were, building up these other things. And thankfully you were working on these other things, right? And
Yep.
building up those multiple streams. But what did the next move look like for you?
Yeah. So at the time that I got laid off, it was like perfect timing because the month prior, February of 2020, I released my first course on the car rental biz and I made 16 grand. And it was crazy because at the time I was literally making, I had just got a new job making 72 grand a year, which is the most I ever made in corporate. So after taxes and all that, maybe like 5,000, right? So literally not quadrupling, but tripling my income in a month, which is like let me know what was kind of possible. So that was another reason why, I wasn't really shaken up about being laid off. I literally told the person who gave me the phone calls, like, don't worry about me. I got plenty of income coming in. I'm gonna be fine. So my next play was really I scaled up the course business that did very well. I think we did like 100 grand in like 28 weeks or something like that after I released. But then I wanted to get into full guts. And that was the car rental course. So I wanted to get into full gut renovations. So like with everything, I always have someone that has done it before that I can learn from. So what I did was I actually gave up some of my time to get that experience. So one of my mentors was doing a full gut renovation. I literally worked for free for him. I'm talking getting to the site at 7 a.m., leaving at 2 p.m. Also, I can just learn, the renovation process. And afterwards, after he finished that, we actually partnered on a property in Inglewood on 67th in Peoria. And at the same time, me and my girlfriend, we bought a building, another 2 unit. And literally the renovations were going on at the same time. Luckily, both of those went very well. And they literally sold. One sold like October 10th, the other sold like October 17th of last year. So did 2 additional rehabs last year, and now I'm trying to get into development.
Balling. Well, that was a good month, huh?
Yeah, that was.
good good stuff. One thing that you mentioned that I definitely don't want to gloss over is sweat equity, right? And the importance of sweat equity. Building and laying that foundation. The foundation of you saying like, hey, I'm here and I'm showing up because I want to learn and I'm serious about this, right? Nothing says I'm serious like showing up, right? And actually being there. And like you said, showing up for free at that. And showing up, in exchange for, like you said, just education and information, understanding, and learning. And I'm sure,
Mhm.
you learned a lot, obviously, through that process that, you're able to take on, to other projects and things like that. So I definitely did not want to gloss over that. And then, the other thing that we talk about is mentor hacking, right? So,
Mhm.
there's a lot of people that, especially in the real estate industry, everybody wants a mentor. Everybody's looking for a mentor for free. And, that's just not, it's unlikely, for you to come
Yeah.
across a mentor these days who's, with anybody that's going to do anything for a favor, for a stranger for free,
Mhm.
But like you said, you showed up and you really showed that, and so I'm sure for him, he had no problem partnering with you because he knew at the end of the day you were going to be accountable and you were going to show up,
For sure.
right?
And I think that's a great point that you brought up because, man, a lot of people get stuck on if they don't have one thing. Because at the time, my building hadn't been sold, so I didn't have the cash. But I'm like, well, I'll give up some money, which I really did. I actually gave up some money on the digital course kind of side of things, stop marketing that because I really didn't have time. And I'm like, well, if I put this work in now, learn all these ins and outs, well, this is a skill that literally I can use for the rest of my life in terms of being able to manage a renovation project and GC it myself. So it was kind of a no-brainer from that regard. But I think a lot of people do get caught up on, maybe I don't have the money or maybe I don't have the credit. Well, it's like, okay, well, someone does. What do you have to bring to the table? Find somebody who has, the other two things that you need and also need what you have. And then just bring those two things together. Because, I added value in a lot of different ways, helping him with his credit, helping him with, financing in terms of, utilizing some of my spreadsheets to run numbers on deals. I just always made sure that I was being an asset to the relationship because at the end of the day, he had what, I don't know, 20 years of real estate experience. And I had what, I don't even know, maybe a year at that point. So it was like, I knew that he was adding way more value to the relationship. So I had to be savvy to see what I could actually bring to the table. And a lot of people, I think, don't focus on that. They focus on what they lack versus what they're bringing to the table.
Yeah, and then staying on in the spirit of partnerships, because I have definitely had my experience of going through partnerships, some good, some bad, some ugly. I feel like I didn't seen it all. Well, I'm probably not all, but I didn't seen enough.
Mhm.
And so, your experience obviously in working with partnerships, I'm sure ultimately ended up well, right? Your projects closed and you got paid, from both of the projects that you were doing, at the same time, one with the mentor and one with your girlfriend. But I do want to talk about that in regards to partnering in real estate, because I do believe in group economics, right? And I do
Mhm.
believe in, like you said, leveraging other people for what you don't have, right? So is it whether it's leveraging other people's money, other people's credit, other people's income, other people's W-2s, right? Job history, other people's retirement accounts, whatever the case,
Mhm.
right? Leveraging other people's experience. And so I want to ask you, just overall, in regards to working with partners, what are some conversations, that you had to have, right? What are some tough conversations that you had to have? Whether that was at the beginning, middle, or end of the project, and going through the process.
Yeah, I think the biggest conversation, with my mentor was just being upfront with the fact that I know that this was a one-sided relationship. But I was going to do, everything in my power to make sure that I was adding, the most value. So what I did was, I basically gave him the understanding that, from 7 to 3, I'll be here. I'll be at the site. If you got vacations or if you just want to do more so the meeting with contractors and things of that nature instead of actually put in that sweat equity. Cause I would like work hand in hand with the carpenter. I mean, I'm learning carpentry. I'm basically seeing everything and actually doing, some of the framing and things like that as well. So I took kind of that role. Just being upfront with that, just making sure that we was on one accord in that regard. And then another thing that's super important, I think, for all partnerships, you have to sit down and understand what each individual person's strengths are. And then you also need to have an understanding of what will piss the other person off, right? Because I had a partnership that didn't go as well, right? And one thing we didn't do was talk about, some of the tendencies in past partnerships that can ultimately, cause a disconnect or cause irritation or attitudes or arguments between, partners. So that's something that you definitely have to have a conversation about, because you have instances where, let's say you're the person in a relationship who's going to be adding more value, well, that other person needs to have an understanding that, at every turn or every opportunity they get, but they need to maybe be on site or they need to maybe just be trying to add value in every which way. Otherwise, that other person can have some sort of resentment. Because I've had that, issue kind of come up where I'm on site every day, but I'm adding, all the value. I'm doing work here and there. And then the person has the opportunity to come to the site and they're like, no, I'm good. I'm not coming. And it's just like that kind of can build some resentment. So really just putting it all on the table, being truthful, and also have an understanding of what type of people do you want to work with, because it's bigger than, will this person add value or not. Sometimes it can extend to, well, how does this person treat their family? How does this person, treat their friends? How does this person treat anybody, right? Because at the end of the day, for me, I wanted to work with good people. I wanted to work with people who were competent, but also people who were kind. But also, you still got to be a shark at the end of the day to get, certain things across the finish line. So having basically an idea of who is this ideal person in a partnership, what does that look like for you? And you really just got to be self-aware at the end of the day to be able to figure that out for yourself, and then to have that conversation with potential partners.
So good, so good, so good, so good. Yeah, we haven't talked about this on any of the other interview summits, so I'm glad that we're touching on it, because there's so many people that their only way to get into real estate is through partnering, right? It
Mhm.
is through partnerships, but having the conversations up front, the hard conversations up front, like Brian said, what your strengths are and your weaknesses, my strengths and my weaknesses, the roles and responsibilities, right? Who's responsible for what? And then
Mhm.
also, what's going to happen if we lose money, right? Like that's a real conversation, right? Have
Yep.
those hard conversations up front. And like you said, just properly, laying out those expectations. So I fully, wholeheartedly can appreciate, that conversation. And thank you so much for sharing that. But yeah, do not get discouraged, guys, in regards to partnering with people, but just make sure everything is set out up front. Make sure you always have a contract. I don't care if you
Mhm.
cannot afford an attorney, to review your contract. There's so many free contracts out there that you can
Yep.
download, and you can literally just read through and just make changes to your liking, right? And if you don't have the funds to pay an attorney to actually look over that contract, or to actually, draft the contract, maybe it's something that you put together and you send it to them to just review, right? So they'll charge you much less than actually putting it
Mhm.
together. But yeah, definitely did not want to skip over that, but I'm glad we touched on that.
For
So
sure.
yeah, so like you said, you had that experience in real estate, and then now you are getting into development, but then also going back to the car rental business. I know you mentioned, starting with one car, partnering with other individuals, right? The partner word again, partnering with other individuals, scaling that company, and then going digital, with it as well. So
Yeah.
talk to us about that process, that transition, even building it up, to how many, cars you had in your fleet at one time, maintaining that, like just, give us the whole rundown on the car rental.
Yeah. So, like I said, I started with that one car that was my personal car. 3 weeks later, I partnered with the person who introduced me to the business. We partnered, got a vehicle, and then I quickly figured out it's like, okay, well, partnerships is probably the fastest way that I can scale this business versus relying on my own personal credit and things like that. Because at the time, just starting out, I wasn't as savvy with business credit as I am now. Now we learned some things over the last couple of years that lets us scale much, much faster. But basically, I leveraged partnerships and able to scale my fleet to like 20 cars in 1 year. So it got crazy really, really quickly. But luckily, I had the freedom of flexibility of being almost a full-time entrepreneur at that point, to manage all of that. But I learned so much in the process. But in terms of going digital, man, it was kind of like it wasn't planned or anything like that. I saw a ton of people selling their courses, but at one point the questions just got overwhelming. I mean, my DMs was filling up. Everybody wanted to interview me for podcasts and things of that nature. And I figured that I was getting the same questions over and over and over. So originally, I actually started doing consultations, like an hour and a half consultation, where literally I was basically going through the course one on one. So I'm like, okay, well, this takes up a lot of my energy, not too much of my time, but so much energy, and it's not scalable. So I'm like, okay, well, let me continue do a couple more consultations, perfect my pitch, essentially, or perfect the course or explanation. And then I just put that thing out there and it just went stupid. It went really, really crazy. And, something I really learned was that, you know, my information was valuable. And like I said, something I've always struggled with was self-confidence. So I was selling it for dirt cheap. I was selling it for $50. Shout out to everybody who copped it for $50 2 years ago. But now, that course sells for $1,000. But that's just something I learned over time as well. It's like you have to look at the value of what you're putting out, because if I sell you something for 1,000 and over the course of a year you make 40 grand, it's like, who got beat? Or if I say something for $50 and you make 10 grand in a year, it's like, I definitely got beat. So over the course I just realized, that you really have to focus on the value that you're providing and let the price kind of align with that. Because something I learned as well is that only like 7 to 10% of people actually complete courses. And especially when you buy something for $50, you have absolutely no incentive to go ahead and complete that course, because the pain of buying it is not big enough. But when you spend maybe $1,000 and you only had maybe 5 or 10, but now you really start to feel that impact of it and you really want to get it done much quicker. But man, I learned so much over the process of just building this digital business, that digital money is really crazy. I really feel like any and everybody has something that someone else can find value in, that they can teach. And really having a product at the end of the day is really what separates, a lot of people from people who just rely on a 9 to 5 or something of the source. Because literally products are everywhere. If you don't have a product, you kind of are at the end of the day limiting your income. So I would recommend that everyone has a product, whatever that is, because man, that's the fastest way to really scale your income, in my opinion.
Man, good stuff. So much content, so many gems dropped there. The 7 to 10% of people only completing courses, like, man, that statistic is crazy. But you said it, right? Like, even like you said, at a lower price point, people don't feel the pain enough to get it done. So actually, as a creator, a digital creator, like, you're actually doing your community a disservice by
Mm-hmm.
having a lower price point, right? The higher the
Yeah.
price point, the more incentive they have, to get it done, to complete it, to at least start it, right? Because they're like, man, I just spent this money, and I got to get my money's worth. And
Exactly.
so once tune in, then, you should be able to take it and apply it, right? But I
Yep.
think I'm sure that's another statistic in itself too, right? Only 7 to 10% of people like complete the course, but then after people complete it, um, there's probably even another statistic on like how many people buy it and don't ever even watch it, right? They're like always,
Exactly.
they keep putting it off. They're like, I'm gonna get to it, and then they start it, but then they don't finish it, and then
Mm-hmm.
maybe they finish it, but then they don't apply it. So
Yep.
like even the statistic is even smaller on how many actually finish it and apply it. And obviously those people, then in turn, become, your success stories.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so good stuff. So in the business, of the car rental industry, I realize like there's so many ways that you can get creative
Mm-hmm.
with buying cars, obtaining financing, business credit, like you said, partnering, things like that. My first question is, obviously it has gotten more popular, right? As
Mm-hmm.
everything does, over the last couple of years. So, one, is it, a still very lucrative industry to get into because, just of where we are, in our economy? Um, and then two, like the most creative ways to not only get started, but to scale.
Yeah. So man, it's super lucrative. I'm actually kind of in awe on how the business hasn't slowed down a bit, even during the pandemic. Like it was really business as usual. And something we really learned is basically, while a lot of people they look to the Atlanta entrepreneurs and they see the Lambos, the Rolls Royces, really the foundation that I tell, all my students to start with is those economy vehicles, those Camrys, Corollas, things like that, because those don't have slow periods. It's like those literally, it don't matter if it's snow on the ground in Chicago, they still gonna be rented out 25, 30 days every single month. So it is still super lucrative. And then in terms of creativity, something that we learned over the past, year and a half is how a lot of different lenders, you can actually go ahead with a brand new LLC with no prior business experience, as long as you got a 680 credit score, or if you don't have that, partner with somebody who has a 680 credit score, and you can get 4 vehicles with one LLC. And the crazy thing about it is, they'll finance 105 to 110% of the cost of the vehicle. So that's covering your sales tax, that's covering your title fees, licensing fees, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of times, now my students are going to get 4 cars just to start their business, and they're walking away with only putting down, maybe $600 to $700, because, the total cost of the vehicle and the down payment is pretty much covered. And then on top of that, they have a couple of things to buy, the lock boxes. We have GPS trackers and shut off devices on all our cars to mitigate our risks and things of that nature. But literally, they're going to get 4 cars and coming out of pocket $500 to $700. And then each of those cars, if they get economy, we either do 2-2 or 3-2. I mean, I'm sorry, 2-2 or 3-1, where you either get 2 economy cars and 2 luxury, where the economy cars are cash flowing $500 a month, the luxury at least $1,000 a month. And then, or you get 3 economy and 1 luxury. So you can make anywhere between 2,500 and $3,000 cash flow. That's net of all expenses, just getting started. So that's like 36 grand passively, right? But then you flip that, right? You create a new LLC and you can run that same play and double that monthly income. So literally, we've been teaching people how to create a 50 to 60 grand passive income stream in a year. So that's really what we've been teaching, man. And the results we've been getting is literally ridiculous. Like, we literally get testimonials every single day in our private car rental community, and it lights a fire under my belt. Because I never knew that this would happen, and it was kind of a lesson in that, because I really wanted to do real estate. I really wanted to teach real estate, but sometimes you got to go with what's working. And the car rental business obviously is more lucrative. You can get into it quicker, but I always still tell my students to take this money and invest it in something that's going to be here forever. Those cars only have a lifespan of, maybe 10 to 15 years, depending on how it's driven, right? But that real estate, that's going to be here forever, right? And that's one of the reasons I wanted to get into development, because it's like, okay, well, I can build this 3 unit, I can put 3 separate families in them. But what if I buy a triple lot? Now I'm building 3 of those. Now I can provide the opportunity for 9 different families to live in this building. Plus, this building is going to be here for over 100 years. So just imagine the impact that you can have, and imagine how many families that you can serve over that course of time if you decide to keep the building. So that's what really interests me, in getting into development. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing I teach is just, you always are serving people. That's really, at the end of the day, we are all servants. So, even in the car rental space, we're giving them an experience, or we're helping someone pay their bills if they're renting our cars to put it on, or to drive Uber and Lyft. And then on the real estate side, obviously, we're providing housing, especially when we invest in the hood. That's why I like doing the hood, really, because I know a lot of people, one, never had good landlords, or never lived in a nicer, newer building. So I love to give that experience. But at the end of the day, like I said, the foundation is just being a servant.
Man, run the play. Run the play, man. That was good. That was good. Thank you for those gems. Yes, I agree as well. By being in real estate, I actually share this with my team all the time. We are in a service-based industry. We are here to serve others, right? And we need more people in business who have integrity, right? And we have a responsibility to show up and show that you can actually do good business with good people, right? Like, you can be a good person and make money without getting over on people, without having to lie about it, without having to do, whatever the case, right? Like, you can do the right thing and it can be profitable, right? And it can be life changing and you can help people. And so, yeah, I definitely wholeheartedly believe that. And man, just like the gems that you shared in regard, like you said, the 2-2 and the 3-1. I mean, like you said, it's $35,000 to $60,000 passively a year. I mean, that is a part-time to full-time job. Hell, when I was making my first full-time corporate job, I think was at 35, 40,000, and that was full time. So, man, you know, I know there are so many people that you have helped that are grateful. Shout out to, you know, some of the folks that are we share who are in our communities. Some of my women in Infinity are also in your community, and so they took, you know, they came back. They was like, listen, you know, I took the class. We about this multiple streams of income, and you know, and it's working. So definitely shout out to you and your team for putting it together, like I said, educating the masses, really putting on for the culture. You know, and with that, I know you have an actual free masterclass that you actually do weekly, you know, helping people understand this subject and teaching them about this topic.
Yep. So we break that all down. So if you're interested, you can go to www.carrentalblueprint.com/webinar. And we host a live webinar every Sunday. So make sure to check that out, because we don't hold back. We give you the game, and we'll sit on there, you know, for an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, when we passionate and we just really want to, you know, give away the gym. So let's make sure to check that out, because I've had people literally come on that masterclass, DM me, say, I'm making money off the free masterclass. I'm gonna get the course too, but I just wanted to let you know. So that was just a crazy experience, that people literally are making money off a free masterclass without even buying the course. I was like, oh, we might be giving away too much. I don't know, but that was dope.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you know, at the end of the day, it's about serving more people, right?
Yep.
And so, you know, you realize like the blessings that you know, give out and that you pour out are definitely gonna come back tenfold. So,
For sure.
cool, good stuff. Well, thank you so much for all of the amazing gems and information that you shared in this interview here with us today. What are some ways that people can find you, follow you, support what you have going on? Share with us the webinar link again.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, the infamous CPA. I'm also on Twitter too. So those are the two main platforms I'm on. Oh, I am on TikTok too. I'm not super active. I got to get it up, but
let me find out. You be dancing on TikTok.
No, I don't be dancing. I take the reels and just post them over there. But you can also check my website at theinfamouscpa.com. That's where you'll find like all my past podcasts, interviews. You'll find some free resources as well. I got like 70, 80 books on there, all PDFs that you can get access to, centered around, you know, leadership, real estate, finance, things of that nature. And then definitely check out our free webinar. You can either find it on the link in my bio on my Instagram, or you can go to, like I said, www.carrentalblueprint.com/webinar.
Cool, good stuff. Well, again, this has been such a great interview series or episode with all of the information that you shared. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. I tell you all the time, I am proud of you. You know, from day one, just seeing you win, you know, seeing you, you know, in your first building, and then the second building and the third building. And like you said, you moving on up to development and really, like I said, just helping the masses. So, you know, I'm rooting for you. I am supporting you. And yeah, I'm just proud to see, you know, my young Black men out here, like really doing it, you know, like Team F that job. Like, you know, they laid you off and you like, you know, I ain't never going back. Like, and that's okay. And that's
I
okay.
appreciate
Cool.
it.
Yes,
Definitely
yes.
appreciate it. And thank you for having me, man. I know this interview series as well as the summit is going to be super dope. I'm glad you put this on, because I know a lot of men was jealous of Infinity. They wanted the resources, wanted to tap in. I know I used to be looking over my girl's shoulder when she was in some of those calls.
Yeah.
Definitely appreciate all you do as well for the culture.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much. All right, guys. Well, this has been another great interview session of the Wealthy Kings Virtual Summit with Mr. Brian Robinson, B-Rob from Chicago, Chi-Town,
Yes,
signing off. Bye.